I see all your updates on social media. I feel like I know you so well thanks to Instagram that I was like screaming of joy when I saw your post that you got engaged.
Oh, thank you. Yes, everybody was very excited about that. It's been sweet. So many people have been like on this journey with me of divorce and finding love again. And I know I've noticed your name pop up so many times throughout it and comments and stuff. It's like there's people that you just remember that you don't know because they
Right.
always comment really sweet things like you. So
Oh,
very good.
well, congratulations. I mean, we could just start off with that because my audience is all like women and moms, right? And a lot of my girlfriends right now who have kids are going through divorces during a pandemic.
A lot of people.
A lot, like more than a handful, I would say. Just like every time I see a friend, it's a new update. I'm getting a
Mhm.
divorce, and I'm like shocked. I'm like, wait, your Instagram, like your last post seemed like you guys were one big happy family. What happened?
I know.
And you get to learn that like through the pandemic, things have changed and shifted in relationships. What would you like talk to me about your experience?
Well, I think it's like it's forced people to take a much closer look at their lives and like, I mean, I'm obviously I got divorced way before the pandemic, but I can see how it forces you to get really honest with like what is happening and what you're potentially avoiding by getting out of the house and going to work and just like making it work. I mean, that wasn't my experience. Well, that was my experience, but pre-COVID, where I was like, busy building a business and
Empire,
that is
empire. Sorry, I
yeah,
have to cut you off.
yeah,
Empire.
which was like another baby. And then I had two very small children and, Cam and I were in the business together and, we had problems and things that we were avoiding and whatever. And we had met, we were 25 years old, but, it was like, I too was one of those people that like, if you had looked at my Instagram a week ago, of course I wasn't talking about that, but I wasn't even admitting it, to myself. And, I'm in the process right now of writing a memoir, which is like, which I feel like memoir, there's a better phrase because I feel like memoir is like something you do when you're 80, but it's basically my whole story. And, a large portion of that is like my life falling apart and coming back together. And, when there was a lot of things that led up to my divorce that I, swept under the rug, didn't deal with, avoided all of that stuff. And then there was like this thing that happened that made everything crystal clear to me. And I don't know if it happens like that for everybody. It was just like all of a sudden I hit a wall and I was like, oh my God, I can't do this anymore. Adrian and I are watching, that what's her face? Jessica Chastain, that
Yes,
show, Marriage,
yes.
something. Is it?
Yeah, the new one. Yes.
Yeah, it's like the scenes from a marriage. And literally last night, it's funny that we're talking about this and I'm talking to you today, but last night they showed an episode and you should watch it, although it's hard to watch. It's basically like her, well, I don't want to ruin it for people, but like their marriage like coming to an end or potentially or whatever. And sorry, spoiler alert, but it's only the second episode, so whatever.
Right.
But it's such a gut wrenching, and there was so much. I mean, Adrian and I talked so much about the episode after the episode because there was a lot of stuff that I related to. There was a lot of stuff that I didn't, but it's just like I think that happens to women and to men. It's like you just like hit this point where you're like, I can't do this anymore. This isn't going to work anymore. And for me, it was like a little bit of like mortality stuff. It's like my parents got divorced when um they were in their like 50s, and also in the book, but a long story is like their marriage was kind of a sham. And I really like looking back, I realized what was modeled and whatever. But my mom died at 65 of cancer, and she never really found love. And I was like, I don't want that. I don't want that. Like, it's not fair to me. It's not fair to him. It's not fair. And what was the biggest mind blowing experience? And not that I'm like an advocate for divorce, but it's like, I think there's this old mentality that you stay together for the kids, but like I was such a bitch and I was like not a good mom and I was unhappy and I was not the best version of myself by far. So, I'm much better of a person and a mom now that I've gone through like that, well, that I went through like hell and back, and now I'm just a better version and I'm a softer version. and I'm better for my kids and I show up much differently for my kids than I did when I was married, but it's just hard to get to that,
Right.
take the step. But I think to your point, the pandemic has forced that out of people of like, oh, we're like in each other's space, we're living together and we're constantly like, and then you just like, it just like brings everything to the surface, I imagine.
It's so funny we talking about this because last week I had lunch with a girlfriend who on Instagram you would think it's the perfect like family, but she mentioned to me she hasn't announced it yet. She's a big influencer and she's getting a divorce. And I guess like I asked her this question because I think my audience would probably appreciate if they're going through something similar is like, what made you take that step? Because for a long time, a lot of people were like just going with the flow. Obviously, with the pandemic, it's in our face, but what gives you that strength to take that step? I think a
Yeah.
lot of people will probably.
Yeah. Yeah. And what was interesting is like when I did, publicly talk about my divorce and I would start to get DMs from people like, I'm really unhappy with my husband. Do you think I should leave him? I'm like, I don't know. I'm not a marriage and I'm
Right,
not a
right,
therapist. Like, I'm not an expert, you know.
right,
But I think to your point about finding the strength, I think it's like, it's funny because Adrian and I talked when we met, we were both divorced, and we talked a lot about, kind of like our culpability and why the marriage didn't work. And one of the things he always has told me that he was initially attracted to in me was that like I was like, oh, I was totally to blame. It wasn't like, my ex was like this awful guy and he did this awful thing and he blah blah, or series of, we both were guilty of doing a lot of things that didn't, contribute to the success of the marriage. And so I think that like, I think his point of view more was like, let's just, he had the more mentality of let's stay together for the kids. And and I understood that. And I wanted to keep our family, quote unquote together. But I think what ultimately, to answer your question, gave me the strength was more of like, I got, like I said, mortality comes up for me because it's like life is short and life is long, right? And I was like, I just don't think either one of us is meant to have, and this is kind of what came up in the show last night too, like this, like, there wasn't passion, there wasn't excitement. And I also think like we were, we're 11 years into Drybar and we were like starting to see this like light at the end of the tunnel where we weren't going to have to be working like dogs
right.
like were, and we were going to have some space and some resources to like go on vacations and be together. And I was like, we want different things. Like we want to go to different places. We want to have, and we were just like the wedge between us and like the distance between us of like what we wanted and how we felt about each other. I was like, there's gotta be more, and I think I mean, listen, I know that I'm lucky in the sense that I was like, I had the resources and I didn't depend on my
Right.
husband for money. And I didn't just, I was like very self-sufficient. And that's something that I've discovered since I've been divorced and talked to other women who are somewhat stuck. They don't want to leave because they haven't been working or whatever. And that's a whole other level of something that I didn't have to deal with. And so part of that strength was like, I can go and do this on my own. But with, talking on both sides of my mouth, because then once I was on my own and I was a single mom, and in the beginning it was rougher for Cam and I, and we weren't really like talking much, and we were both a little off the rails, and it was bad at first. And I was like, oh, I'm totally a single mom. Holy shit. And I was like, I have to make these decisions together. I don't have this person that I've had for 16 years helping me make
Right.
decisions, talk about stuff, blah, blah, blah. And that was when I think I took like a very like, oh shit, like this downward spiral started for me of like, I didn't think through, which I'm glad I didn't. I'm such a like jump then think person.
Right.
And it usually is like good for me. And it's like part of why I've been successful because I'm just like, just go figure it out later.
Right.
And I kind of, to a certain extent, did that with ending my marriage too. Cause I was like, I don't know what's coming and I don't know what's next. And like, part of that's exciting and part of that's scary.
Right.
It turned out to be more scary than I anticipated, and like being, alone, but ultimately, and the best advice I would give to somebody who's in this struggle of their own is like, trying to figure out what's best for you and what what you think will make you the happiest on the other side. And, even when I was in that, pit of like despair, and I was really depressed and really down, I never once was like, oh, I wish I hadn't done that, or essentially blown up my life and changed everything. I never felt that. I always felt like, I hope this gets better. I hope I don't always feel like this.
Right.
I hate feeling so down. It was, that all sucked. But there was never a time where I was like, oh, but I wish I had not left my husband. I wish I had not like ended the marriage, that we made that decision. I was grateful still that I did that. And I was like clawing my way out of that time. But it became this like empowering thing. And I'm, like I said, I'm on the other side of it. It's just so much better and happier, that I'm so grateful that I did it.
I mean, I just looking off of like your photos with your fiance and your posts, you could see, you could feel the vibration of that you're in a good place and you're happy. You could just tell. I don't even have to know you, and I could just tell that.
So
And
many people say that. It's true. Yeah.
it just comes off. The energy just comes off your post. You know what's so interesting is I had a whole different set of questions to ask you, but you talking to you right now, I'm just like, you brought up something that is a very common theme to what people are thinking. And I don't know if people talk about it as much. So let's talk about it. You talked about the fear of dying, right? Something like your mom died at 65. You never really probably thought about that before. I feel like with COVID, just because of like what's happening, my grandfather passed away last week, and
Oh,
God bless him, he was 88, so he lived a long life. But I
yeah.
feel like it's more front and center in my face now with COVID. And I
Yeah.
am starting to think about, I'm 39, but I'm starting to think about death and like
Yeah.
how I want to live my life. And it's only because it's so in front of your face with hearing stories about people passing away from COVID and stuff. I don't know, like, let's talk about that, because I don't think many
Yeah.
people talk about that, but I feel like every single person is feeling those same thoughts, right?
Yeah, we had on our podcast, I don't know if you know Rabbi Leader.
Mhm.
He's and he has a book that's called The Beauty of What Remains. And I started listening to it when I had we had a friend who died of cancer young, kid. It was so sad. And that wasn't COVID, but we've also, to your point, we all kind of know people affected by this, and then just by the cancer pandemic, really,
Right.
or epidemic. But he talks so eloquently, and this book is so good. And I was listening to it after we had him on our podcast, because I was so intrigued by him. And if you get a chance to listen to
I'm
this
gonna
episode,
listen to it, yeah.
well, if you're thinking about death, you right now, you'd probably really appreciate it, because I think, for me, to your point, it's like, we don't want to talk about it. We don't want to think about it. It's just like this thing over there that we're not going to worry about until it starts to be in your face. And he talks about how there's I'm not going to do him justice really here, but this essential idea of like, we work really hard, and we try to live our lives to the fullest, because we know there's going to end. And if there was no end, we would just be like, meh, and we wouldn't have the goal, like I said, he says this much more eloquently, but we wouldn't have the goals, we wouldn't have the ambition, because we wouldn't be on a timeline. We're on a timeline trying to do all these things, before we get too old, before we die. And so, and the way he paints this picture, having, officiated lots and lots of funerals, and part of what he does, and then his own father dying and how it affected him, it's just, he makes, death feel somehow more bearable. And it always like brings up weird things for me too. And it's like when you have kids, it's like you're so scared of your kids, something happening to your kids, and like my fiance, and like the things that, like, for me, those thoughts come up, and I have to just be like, okay, let's not dwell on that. But I do think that I loved what he said about that, because it does feel like this is something that really actually drives us, and is obviously inevitable for everybody. And keeps us, like, I mean, again, the book is so good, but like grateful for our health and the things that we have and the lives that we live, which is like a good reminder when we're like being stupid and I'm talking to myself, and being like dwelling on silly things, and not, like seeing the bigger picture of like life is short, and like, you know, it's like so cliche, but like live it to the fullest. And when you are faced with death and someone around you or close to you dies, like what feels prematurely, you're like, damn, I need to like, you never know, you know? So
Well, thinking about that, I feel like you have done so much in your life. You are a mogul from beauty to wellness to having a jewelry brand. Um, you know, when I look at your life, you are so successful. You've paved the way for so many women, and like when we're talking about this, you got to keep going, got to keep creating because we think there's that like life is short. Is
yeah.
there something that you are like, I want to get involved with this and create something in this sphere that you haven't yet?
Well, it's more of like, I'm not a real like planner. I'm not a planner at all. I'm a more like fly by the seat of my pants kind of. I get like very inspired, and once I get an idea of anything, like you really can't get in my way if I want that. You know, I mean, it's been,
Yeah.
you ask anybody close to me, anybody in my family, it's like, oh, if Allie gets obsessed on something, like forget it. You know,
Right.
I mean, just like even like silly things, like I just, you know, I just got a Persian like smush face cat, which you've probably seen on my Instagram because I'm beyond obsessed with her. But you know, I got obsessed with this and I was like, I'm getting this cat. I don't even really like cats, but anyways, and really that's how I am about all the things that, you know, you see that I'm doing are, you know, are it's just like, you know, kind of like the reality of my whatever I'm passionate or excited about coming to life. And those, and I'm at a point in my life where I feel so lucky and grateful that I can like entertain a lot of different things. You know, I mean, I'm not in the day to day of Drybar anymore. And so we've started, you know, the Feel Good Company, which is, you know, houses Squeeze and Okay Humans. And I'm also not in the day to day operations of those companies, but I'm an advisor and an investor. And I'm proud of those and I love those. And Brittany Driscoll, who's my, you know, business partner, she's at the helm of those, and Christy Desai, who's Okay Humans, you know, they're doing it. And you know, I get to be in board meetings and hear what's going on in the business and contribute, you know, really kind of where I want to and where I'm needed. And I love that, you know, and then I, you know, decide that I really have like a deep love of jewelry, and this like kind of opportunity feels like it kind of fell in my lap with Meredith Quill, who's my business partner. And so I just kind of like go, which I always have. And if, you know, if I were to tell you my, you know, life story or how I started, it was like, I always jump from job to job of thing to thing that I really enjoy doing. And that's always been like my kind of compass for like life, you know, it's just like, I'm not going to do something. I'm so impatient as a person and I can't, and I've never understood. And I think it's good that everybody's different, but like, I can't, if I don't like something or I'm not feeling something, it's really hard for me to stay in it. You know, I'm kind of like, this doesn't feel right. I need to keep moving. And, you know, and like one of the other things that is a newer endeavor for me, which you've probably seen on my Instagram, is this impact series that I'm doing with Adrian, which is like another thing that I've been trying to figure out how to actively give back to other entrepreneurs. Like, you know, I take calls here and there and I've kind of mentored people here and there, but this particular like forum of being able to like be in a room, you know, with a small intimate group of founders for 2 days is like so fun. And we did it, you know, in Austin a couple months ago, and it's like, you know, and we want to keep it small because we want it to be intimate and to be like really be able to dig in with them. But like that's something that I'm so grateful that I've wanted to do for a long time. I've been trying to figure out the vehicle to do it. And you know, and to your question, it's like I kind of keep wherever I get inspired, and there's things that I, you know, that I want to do. And there are other things that I, you know, would like to do. And I mean, I'd like to be like a talk show host, which is a loftier dream. Um,
Which I think you can't, Allie, if anybody could do it, it's you.
I think so too. Like I feel like I love fucking talking, as you can see. But you know, so there's things that like that are kind of like more out there and lofty. And then there's like, you know, things that like I can really do and focus on, like this impact series where I can make a difference and I can connect with people and I can help other people coming up, because there weren't things like this when I was like starting out. So
Oh,
I'm happy to
you
get back in that.
basically, you literally found it your own way. You paved the way for everybody else. It's fascinating. You didn't have a guy, like a, you know, a plan. You just
No.
dived in and did it.
And when we started Drybar, like when I think back to that time, there was so, I mean, female entrepreneurs in general have like become a thing, right? And then like female entrepreneurs especially. But you know, when we started Drybar 11 years ago, and I'm 46. So I was like 35 when we started Drybar. It was like, I remember doing interviews in the early days and people saying like, who's your role model? Who's your mentor? And I'm like, well, I don't know. There's like Donna Karan,
Right.
and like I knew women, female fashion designers. Maybe more because I kind of wanted to be in that space when I was younger. But there weren't like, the Whitney Wolfs and Rebecca Minkoffs and Candace Nelson and, I mean, and list could go on and on, who were so accessible, who were out there speaking on panels, doing talks where you like, now there's so much like available to us
Right.
from female vendors. But yeah, you're right. At that point, there was nothing. There was not a lot of transparency, and there weren't a lot of women starting businesses as like there is now, which is so rad.
It is so amazing. About your like program, if people want to join that, how would they join it? Because that sounds so
The
fast.
Impact series. So the way it's set up, and it's still relatively new, so we're still kind of like figuring out some things. But basically, it's like it's a weekend, a Saturday and Sunday, because all of us work. And Adrian, my fiance, who I know but for people listening, he's a leadership coach, a business coach. He coaches founders like people like Jenny from Jenny's Ice Cream, and the founder of Hyperloop, which is Virgin's new. I don't know if you've heard of that company where they're doing the underground, tube to San Francisco.
Yes.
And just a bunch like Catherine McCord from Relicious, I'm sure and then a bunch of other like Nike execs and just really cool CEOs and founders. And he's brilliant, and he's super smart, and he brings this very different kind of way he talks and the way he sees the world, as a coach, and how to like help people. He doesn't give advice, as I used to say, like, what do you tell people to do? He's like, I don't tell them to do anything. I get them to think about things differently. And I'm like obviously I'm a founder. I've lived that life. I know the hardships. And I think there's like a handful of things that as a founder, we all go through and we're all dealing with. It's like, we just need some help with it along the way. So anyways, we came up with this idea to do these like weekend retreats where it's like Saturday and Sunday all day. We're in a room, essentially like digging into people's business. And because you're in this like group setting, of a small group setting, and everybody in there is founders and has their own company, different companies, but is talking about the things that are working or not working. And it's growing, scaling, staff, marketing, like the big buckets, right? But it's like everybody's able to talk about their different things, which helps other people. And so, Adrienne has a very specific point of view on things. And then I have my point of view, which comes from a very different lens. So we decided to create this impact series that basically helps these entrepreneurs. And you can go onto my Instagram, and there's a link in my bio where you can click on it and see, and you have to apply, because we are somewhat curating the room. We do want it to be people who are like really dedicated in it, and and there is a fee to it and all of that, but it's really we did the first one in Austin with Jenny from Jenny's Ice Cream.
I love Jenny's Ice Cream. Yeah.
The best. And she's so smart and eloquent and successful. And, I was just kind of a fly on the wall in that, and talked a little bit, but it was amazing, the energy in the room, and like the people coming together. And I also think, just based on like where we've been for the last, year and a half, people being in a room together, bouncing ideas off each other again feels like, thank God, like we're able to do that, so that's kind of what it looks like. And we're working on the next couple of ones too, which is exciting. So it's fun, and I get to do it with Adrienne, so that's even more fun.
I love it. Another passion thing, like you have fun with your fiance,
Yeah.
you get to help people.
Because I mean, for me, and I'm sure you feel this way too, it's like I'm pretty, and I think a lot of people do now, especially through COVID, and being like, I want to do what I want to do. And people are
Right.
quitting their jobs and pivoting and doing other things. It's like I like, there's nothing that I hate more than like doing something or being like, and not having like feeling like energy around it, like something that's like an energy suck. And you know what I'm talking about, where you're like in a room with people and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm
Yeah.
so tired and I can't, it's like nobody, so for me, this is all, it's like very motivating and exciting and kind of lights me up. So
So I have a lot of women listening, and I know you started Drybar pre-pandemic. I feel like if you were to start a company right now, today, with the atmosphere we're in, what advice would you give an entrepreneur? Like, what's that like underlying like thing that they all must know? Because it's such a different world now, right? From when you started.
Well, I think it is, but what's so interesting to me is like, when we started Drybar, obviously there was nothing like Drybar, and what one of the biggest pillars of our success was like the experience we created, right? I mean, because like typical hair salons were, we're charging a lot for blowouts. You were getting cut and color. There was like, it just wasn't like a super like fun environment. It was like
For hours.
it was there for hours. It was like a means to an end, and blah blah blah. It just was like meh, And don't get me wrong, like I love going and getting my color done, but yeah, I don't like. I hate. I want to get out of there pretty quickly, and you do end up spending a lot of time there. The mentality, the culture, everything was different. And when we created Drybar, it was like, it was like quick, relaxing. You felt like $1,000,000 because you looked amazing walking out. And so and all of that was created obviously because we were giving great blowouts, but because like the music was fun. You could watch it, a chick flick,
Right.
charge your iPhone, you ran into your friends, like all those, we treated great. Champagne, the customer service was great. We had great snacks. Like there was lots of things that contributed to like, or contribute, I should say. It's not like it's still around. What made people fall in love with Drybar, the branding, so that experience that we created didn't really exist. And I think that was like a long time coming from me and my brother Michael, who's my business partner, because our parents owned clothing stores as a kid. And I've told this story before, but it was like little old lady clothing stores in South Florida. And it was like Missy Sportswear, so really inexpensive, like older ladies' clothes. But and these old ladies would take the trolley in from their little retirement community. If you live or know Florida, there's a lot of them.
Right.
And my dad would set up chairs at the front of the shop and bring the men, the husbands, bagels and like orange juice in the newspaper. So they would be like content while their wives shopped, which was like probably my very first marketing lesson. It was brilliant, right? It's like the husbands are happy, the wives shop longer, they buy more stuff, and Michael and I always had this like bend over backwards customer service mentalities. That was also baked into what I think made Drybar. So anyways, there wasn't, Michael and I were always really frustrated and still are a lot of the time when we would go into a business. And like, to answer your question, it's, so many businesses miss the mark. I'm sure you experience this too. Like they don't treat you very well. You don't feel very like taken care of or special when you're in the shop. There's not kind of a cohesive thread, which AKA branding, that, and then just who's running this place and why is it dirty and why is the music weird and why is nobody talking to me and why, and all the things that like, for me, it's like a sensory overload or assault when I walk into most businesses, including my own, is the pickiest, because I want all these things to be a certain way. So, I think that we helped contribute to that like experiential thing that kind of happened, right? Which is like, then like all these like facial places started popping up, like Heyday and, like these and like lash bars and all the things that started like creating experience. And we very much came out with this, like we do one thing and we do it really well. And that was blowouts, And so, I think then that was like in 2010. And then it was like things started to go online, and then everybody started like everything was online. And I think we all saw this like online thing happening and direct to consumer got huge. And you could, spend a little bit of money on ads and it would like you do all this business. And I kind of was like excited about that with my jewelry business, like as direct to consumer. But I'll tell you what I'm learning through that business is like, I think it's just now because of the way the world is and the fact that like people have been cooped up for so long and now people want to get back out. Even I think we thought the pendulum was going to swing more, and it will, and of course digital is digital.
I was in Drybar last week. I posted and it felt so good. I was like, yes, I want champagne. Yes, I want to watch this chick flick.
Yeah, you want to be like out and in the world. Yeah.
And a scalp massage. I'm like, yes.
Yeah. Give me everything.
Everything.
But I think
on the menu.
That's what happened. It's like we were definitely swinging towards the digital world, which of course we're still in and still very prevalent. But now everyone's kind of like very eager to get out and have an experience again. So it's a really amazing time for businesses to be like, okay, let's create that experience, which goes back. I mean, it's like goes back to these pillars of like great customer service, great branding and marketing, like cleanliness. Like, I know that sounds silly, but like take care of your spot, and I just saw, you're in LA, right?
Yeah, I'm in LA.
I just saw, I didn't realize this, but like that Glossier is taking this massive space on Melrose across from like the Real. And I
Yeah.
was like, what, why? Because I noticed like their little place shut down and Lunia is going in there. I live in that area, so I'm around it a lot. And I was like, that's a good sign, that like Glossier is opening this mammoth space. I don't know anything about it really, other than I saw the billboards.
Right.
But it's like people, because I'm assuming they're doing this because we all want to get back out and have like in-person experiences again. And those pillars, like I mentioned, like customer service, branding, attention to detail, like that is like timeless and that's never going to change. So to your point, if you're starting a business, especially like a brick and mortar business, like if you don't have those basics, so many businesses have them now, like the Glossiers of the world, like Lunia, like Real, like any of like the great, like I'm thinking of stores that I go into that like you just like the way you feel in them, and that is like a key, massive, crucial part to success.
I agree. I feel like everybody wants to be recognized now. Like when I go to a place where I have a membership, it's such a great feeling when I walk in, they know who I am, they know what table I'm sitting at.
It really
I
is.
no longer want to go to restaurants where it's like drama to get a table. I'm so over it. Like before I used to be like, I need to be here, I need to be there, I need to be where there's like a scene. And now I'm like, no, I want to go places where they know me, they know what table I want to sit, they know what I like to eat.
Like Cheers, you want to go where everybody knows your name. I mean, it is true. And that's always what I wanted for Drybar. And like even like where I work out at this place called Bunda, which is like the science behind it is like if you kind of build a better butt, you build a better body. And I really love the workout. And I was just telling somebody about it and how much I love it. And I'm like, and I just kind of like that they know who I am now. When I come in, they're like, hey, Alli.
On Melrose? Is it on Melrose?
It's on West Third, and now they just opened one in Santa Monica, and it's kind of like resistance training with like a stairmaster too. And my dear friend Kevin and his wife own it, and Kevin is a personal trainer and trains like Adele and like all these awesome people. And I worked with him one-on-one, and then I was like, dude, I can't afford you. So he's like, go to Bunda. And so I started going to Bunda, and it's changed my body, and I walk to it. And to your point, it's like my place, and I know people there, they know me, and I love that. And I think that's such a great point that you bring up. It's like that personalization and making people feel known and seen and special. Like you can get that, like you're golden. You really are.
And I feel like that old ways of doing things of exclusive just doesn't, I don't care anymore. I don't care
Yeah.
anymore.
It's like, yeah, who has time for that shit?
No,
I agree. I don't want to be in a place like that.
um, if you were to have a title for your life, if you had a movie about your life, what would you call it?
Oh my God. That's such a good, hard question. And then I'm tempted to tell you the title of my book, but I don't think I should.
No, don't say it. Keep that a secret because
that's what I would call it. But I can't tell you because I'm not supposed to, I will get in trouble.
How about just dive in?
How about what?
She just dives in.
Well, it's funny. I mean, I actually just hired this company, and I've talked about it a little bit on my Instagram there. And if you don't know them, it's called Simply Be, and it's a branding, Jessica.
Simply Be, wait, is that Sarah?
Jessica Swag. I always say her name wrong, but she is the founder of it. And I met her years ago. She used to write for like a local publication, and she actually just put out a book called Simply Be. And it's really about like embracing who you are. And like, she's a branding kind of strategy, digital expert. And I hired her, which I'm happy to tell people, because I have, I'm working on a book, I'm working on all these projects, and I need help. I haven't had like a publicist for about a year or so. And that kind of dropped off for me during the pandemic too, because I was like, I don't need this right now. But now I've brought her on, and what's been really cool about her agency and what she does is like, which is a little bit felt like a lot of time that I felt like, my time is so precious and I have so little of it, but like wanted to do like a deep dive into me and who I am and what I want and blah, blah, blah. And one of our like little tagline was like, jump, then think. And I think like after talking to me for hours and getting to know me and asking me tons of questions, they kind of came up with that, which is I was like, I love it because it is me. And I actually think I mentioned that earlier in our conversation, because I think that is probably like superpower is like, just do it, just start, just go and figure out the logistics
Right.
and how to do it later, you
Because
know?
people, when they sit and like think about it too much, waste time, and then they get scared, and there's like a lot of fear factor. But once you go in, you have no choice but to figure it
You're
out.
in. You jumped in the pool, you're in it, you can't get out now. And I mean, of course you can, but, and I think that that's always been, like I said, I think it has served me really well in my businesses. I think it's really served me well in general, but I think it's like been harder at times, but it is, I'm not I'm, I'm not promoting like not thinking things through, but I am more of a like, let's just go and figure out the shit later.
Right.
And, I operate, and sometimes that backfires, sometimes it makes life harder, but I think ultimately it has served me well. And to title my life, I think that that's, probably a good, a good title to put on it, because I think that's how I operate, and that's how I've had my biggest success and probably my biggest failures.
I love it, and I actually can't wait for your book. I feel like that is much needed in the world we are today.
I hope.
Um, I feel like it'll be a great handbook for a lot of people, for a lot of women. And
Yeah. Well, I mean, my hope is that, what I'm trying to make the book is like, it's a real, you know, um, like a lot of the business stuff and then a lot of the personal stuff, and it's all very interwoven. It's really just kind of like the whole trajectory of my life and career. And I think that I hope, there'll be some kind of something in it for everybody.
now I could talk to you for hours, but I know we have very little time. The one thing I want to ask you before we head out is, do you feel like people have an entrepreneur gene in them, or do you feel like you could help people become entrepreneurs? Like, do you have to have something in you that like pushes you and keeps you going and helps you, right?
I think like a couple years ago, I probably would have said, yes, you need to have like that entrepreneurial spirit or gene. And I definitely have it. My parents were entrepreneurs, but I also think if, if it's a mindset and a vision conversation too, I think that like Cam, my ex-husband, is a really great example, because his parents like were school teachers, and like they weren't entrepreneurs, and like, and I remember when we were starting Drybar, like how scary it all was for him. And like, oh, but what if this happens? And oh, what if this happens? And me and my brother are like, who cares?
Right,
Not who
right.
cares, but like, we're just gonna see, and his risk tolerance was much lower than ours. We were like, we're gonna hope this works, and we're gonna be like, cautious, but we're going to keep moving. Whereas like it took him a minute to kind of be like, okay, and I think that like there are people who, have never had an entrepreneur in their life or their family. And then, but they get really inspired by a friend. And I think to answer your question, I think anybody can do it as long as they know what they're signing up for, that you might lose money, that your career or your path might get derailed, and you might have to like, it may not work, and you may have to like, and that was always, I think, the thing that like gave me comfort in the early Drybar days when we didn't know. I mean, looking back, it's like, of course it worked, but like in the beginning, and it was also in the middle of a recession, there was a lot of people who didn't think Drybar was going to work. A lot of people were like, how do you make this financially, this model work? Because you're charging $35 a blowout. Like, you got to do a lot of blowouts. And I was like, shit, I know. And I remember thinking, if we didn't do, literally like keeping me up at night in my head going, if we could do 40 blowouts a day at $35 a pop, I think it'll work. Like, I didn't know it was going to turn out to be like we were doing more of like 100, 150 a day. I didn't think that was a possibility. But at the end of the day, what I kept coming back to was like, if this doesn't work, we're going to lose some money, which will be hard and will suck, but like no one's gonna die, and we're really smart, like capable people. We'll go figure out something else, or I'll go get a job or whatever. There's always another like thing you can do or project you can try, or and so I have like, I like to take risks. I'm a big risk taker, and I think that that is the key ingredient for an entrepreneur. And I don't think everybody's born with it, but I think that as long as you understand that and you can get comfortable with that, then you can probably do it. But I also don't think being an entrepreneur is for everybody. I mean, I see the allure of like having a job, being told what you're supposed to do, and not having to think about it at night and on the weekends. There's
Right.
something really beautiful about that too. So, it's like wherever you fall, there's like no shame in either place.
I know, and I think with social media, the word entrepreneur is like so sexy and glamorized, but like there's a lot
Oh,
that goes into being
it
an
is
entrepreneur.
not sexy. I feel like I know you're right, but it's like, I'm like, it is like the most non-sexy thing. It's like, I think about like I just like I never stop working, I mean, between all of my businesses and all of my things, like I'm never not working, but it's like another cliche. It's like if it doesn't feel like work when you like what you do. Like I love what I do and I get really excited and I'm like I love like the thrill of the chase and the catch and the build and I love all of that stuff. So it's exciting to me, which is like, it might not be to everybody else, so or somebody else. So go find the thing that gets you excited,
I
is
agree.
my
Where
best.
could everybody find you, Allie?
So probably the best place is just my Instagram is kind of my hub for everything. Although I will be probably with this new brand I'm working with Simply Be, they want me to have a website. So I will probably have that coming soon. But right now, just my Instagram is Alli Webb, and that's ALLIWEBB. And you can find out about Impact Series, about my businesses, whatever
I
I have.
actually am interested about the impact series. I'm going to look into that. That's
Yeah, look into
really
it.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna have all sorts of different founders kind of highlighting them. I'm doing this one. And then we just announced Jessica, who's the founder of Simply Be. She's going to do the next one, probably in Chicago. And then I have a couple other people. I mean, luckily most of my friends are founders of companies and awesome women like you that, I have a lot of ideas and things I want to do with it.
Oh, amazing. I'm going to check out the next LA one. Count me in for that. And this was
Well, it's coming up. It's in October. So check it out.
okay. I'll check it out. I'll check it out today.
Yeah.
Honestly, you're such an inspiration. And when I was thinking about this new season of Dream Big, I'm like, Allie has to be on it just by seeing your journey and where you are today. It's just so beautiful. And I'm
Thank
just,
you.
yeah,
And
and
thank
thank you
you
for
for the
sharing it.
support and love. It's like, I really do. I really try to respond to everybody on Instagram and like, I'm so grateful for like this community and support that I have. And, for people like you, it's really awesome. I'm
We're cheering you
grateful.
on, and your happiness is our happiness. And I love seeing you
So
smile.
sweet.
So keep posting because I love it.
I will. I will. All
Thanks so
right. Thank you
much.
so much.
So
Okay.
nice to meet you, Allie. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for coming on. And I want to send you something to your house. So send me your best mailing address. I'm going to send
Okay.
you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
I'll send it to you like through DM or email.
Oh, that'll be amazing. Nice to meet you, Allie. And you look beautiful. You're
Oh,
glowing.
thank you. You're so sweet. You too.
See
Bye.
you. Bye.